Patrick, thank you very much. The last time we won a platform, so to speak, together was on the 15th of June 2016 with Brendan Chilton from Labour League and another guy who I forget, I think he was called Nigel Farage, at the Kingsgate Community Church in my then Peterborough constituency. I think you're absolutely right about people being fed up with Brexit. Imagine my life in the last 2 years. I think I may have caught Brexit derangement syndrome from Alistair Campbell and Gary Lineker, Gina Miller, and the superannuated tax-avoiding soap dodger Bob Geldof. But I mustn't be so rude about my elders and betters. So that was where we were then, just before that fabulous victory. And of all my career in politics, I've been a member of the Conservative Party for 35 years. I know it's hard to believe when you look at me. But I don't think I've ever had a prouder moment than that evening at the Kingsgate Community Centre, where we counted the count and Peterborough came in 61% for Leave, as did the Eastern Region and England and the United Kingdom. Now, we've got to think about why Brexit happened, and it happened not because people were xenophobic or backward-looking or racist or wanted just white people in the country. This is all vile calumny and lies by the Remainers. It happened actually not solely because of immigration. About 33% did vote on the issue of immigration, but almost half the people voted on the issue of sovereignty, democracy, having a parliamentary system that is independent and proud and outward-looking and globally facing. And not least because we've been lied to over 40 years, told that we were involved in a common market. We were never consulted about this incremental drive to one country, one flag, one civil service, one parliament, one foreign policy. And that's why actually Patrick is absolutely right that the status quo was never on the ballot paper, because for those people that voted Remain, they were effectively voting for more centralised policies, closer monetary union, a European army, European foreign policy, and the creation of one country, and the final destruction of British sovereignty, independence and political freedom. And when we're talking about a second referendum, I say to people, we've had a second referendum. It was on the 23rd of June 2016. We had the first one in June 1975. We were never asked whether we wanted to join the common market by Grocer Heath. We were just told it was going to happen, and it did. But we agreed. Now, my mum and dad voted yes on that occasion because they were told there were going to be 3 trade blocs in the world: Japan, which was the colossus in the Far East, the United States and its environs, and Europe. And let's face it, under socialism, we were a basket case in 1975. We were like Albania with more rain, okay? Interest rates through the roof, the trade unions running everything owned by the state, Rolls-Royce, water, electricity, Thomas Cook, roads, schools, everything owned by the state. That's what will happen, incidentally, if Corbyn gets his hands on power. And we won't even be like Venezuela. But the fact is that what the referendum results showed is a big cultural shift. It showed that there was a huge chasm between the people from somewhere and the people from nowhere. And that's the point, sadly, that the Prime Minister made in 2016. She got a lot of flack for saying that. And the point is that the people that voted for Brexit voted for their community ties, voted for their local areas. And above all, they felt estranged and alienated from the fruits of globalisation. For too many people in this country, when George Osborne said, if you vote Leave and don't vote Remain, your life will be terrible. Yeah. And for a lot of people, they said, well, hold on a minute. I can't get my kid into their primary school of first choice because of overcrowding. I actually can't get my older child into any council accommodation, and the other kid is in a rubbish minimum wage job. How much more rubbish is my life going to be? And for those people, they felt, as the family on the Dogsthorpe estate in Peterborough said to me when I knocked on the door in June 2016, Mr. Jackson, you politicians are all liars, cheats and thieves. Thank you, I said. But we're going to vote leave. All four of us, for the first time in 25 years, because for the first time in our life, our vote will matter. Our vote in the referendum is as good as the millionaire in Bayswater, or the hedge fund manager, or all these other beautiful people that are so intelligent and tell us why and how we voted in the referendum. And I think it's incredibly important now, because those people haven't learnt their lesson. Stop telling us why we voted leave. Stop telling us that we're too stupid to understand what it was about. Stop telling us that they know better, because it's not the case. And the problem with those people is they see everything through the prism of material self-interest. Of course it's great for them. They've got a swanky job, they do international travel, they have a cheeky latte made for them by in their Polish deli, and they've got their Hungarians cleaning their car. Of course it's fabulous. But if, like in Peterborough, 68% of primary school children speak English only as their second language, and we've seen massive, unprecedented levels of inward migration from the EU, driving down wages, driving up shareholder value for the fat cats. Of course the CBI love the European Union. It's an oligopoly, it's a monopoly. It's a closed market which keeps competitors out. And what do they care about? They are the multinationals trade union. They care about their international shareholders, shareholder value, and they care about continuing cheap labour. They don't care about people in this country, how well skilled they are, how well paid they are. Everything is tickety-boo. So I've got to say, the arguments for a referendum are nonsense. This idea that suddenly we have to have a second referendum because we cheated in the previous one. Cheated? The government spent £9.3 million on a leaflet telling us that they would abide by any decision we took. And then you had the IMF, you had the Bank of England, you had the crook, Christine Lagarde, you had Obama coming to our country telling us how to vote. That went well, didn't it? But suddenly it was an imbalance. And the polls haven't moved because people aren't stupid. You never get anywhere in politics by assuming that the people are stupid. And actually, we've trusted Parliament. I get down on my knees every day and thank the Lord for Gina Miller. Because she actually tried to wreck Brexit, and what she did was validate Brexit. Because we voted for a referendum in massive numbers. In fact, I told David Cameron that he had to have a referendum. I did, at Chequers. I said, you're going to have a referendum to lance the boil, and he agreed with me. The only time he did agree with me, probably on many things, but he did. And the rest is history. Parliament has approved that referendum. Parliament agreed to have and abide by the referendum. We accepted the decision. We voted in overwhelming numbers to invoke Article 50 through the proper procedure. Now, people said to me, well, why didn't we just walk away? Why don't we say, well, up yours, we're going to move? Because we're British. We do things by the rules. We're a rules-based country and society. There's a reason we're the number one power in the world for soft power. It's because people essentially trust us, because of stability, because of legal order, because of our incorruptibility and judicial system. So Parliament has done its job. But we are at an historic juncture, because what we saw at Chequers was nothing short of a constitutional coup. David Davis was negotiating in good faith. We were on the 9th iteration of the White Paper, working on a Canada plus free trade deal. Not pulling up the drawbridge, not saying there'd be no immigration, working with the European Union, paying where it was in the British national interest on things like Horizon 2020 and Erasmus and Galileo, working for our mutual benefit. 9 iterations. They were all shredded on the afternoon of the 5th of July 2018, and Ollie Robbins, the PM's EU advisor, said, here's one I prepared earlier. Now, do you think it's appropriate that the Secretary of State for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, who was then Boris Johnson, should be given 128 pages agenda at 2 o'clock the day before Chequers? Most of the cabinet were kept in the dark. Only a few were told what was going to happen. Greg Clark one, Hammond the other, Lidington. It's an absolute disgrace. And the Strategy and Negotiations Subcommittee, the so-called Brexit War Cabinet, has not met since July. The Cabinet is not even considering Brexit on its agenda tomorrow. So we have a constitutional coup led by senior Europhile civil servants and the ministers who are colluding with them, and I think that's completely disgraceful. And Chequers itself, now I will say why it's a disaster. The Common Rule Book is not a common rule book. It's a rule book designed for the EU, which we will be forced to accept. And why is it a disaster? Because our competitive advantage is services. If we cannot offer to countries like Indonesia or Mexico or Canada or South Africa some divergence from the EU's common rule book for goods, they're going to say, well, why should we let management services, legal services, accountancy into our country when you won't let us export our widgets to you? We might as well skip the monkey and go to the organ grinder in Brussels. So that's why it's important. Not only that, but as Patrick alluded to, our great advantage is in things like artificial intelligence, driverless cars, biomedical sciences. Well, no one's going to invest in them if they know that we have to abide by the EU rulebook. Because make no mistake, the European Union has two key strategic objectives with Brexit. One is didactic, to teach us a lesson so that no one does it anywhere else in the European Union, right? To punish us. The second one, Martin Selmayr, the now all-powerful chef de cabinet to Juncker, he describes the UK as a stone in his shoe. When he's thrown the stone away, can run faster towards a more centralised Europe. But remember, what they want to do is undermine our competitive advantage once we've left. And that's why another aspect of Chequers is a disaster. It sounds quite benign, the non-regression clause. And what that means is, because they're obsessed with the idea that we're going to liberalise and deregulate, and we're so close to them as a market, that they tie us into all the regulatory strands that they can, social, environmental, labour, economic, climate change. Now, you might say, well, that's not that bad, is it? Well, imagine Canada has done a deal with the European Union. If you live in Vancouver in British Columbia, do you expect Brussels to tell you what your air quality standards should be forever? You'd think they were mad. But that's what Mrs May is signing up to. Because we're in close proximity to Europe, that's what we're signing up to. And very briefly, we've got the facilitated customs agreement. I won't use the colloquialism. The FCA. That is so complicated, expensive, time-consuming, that even the EU think it's rubbish. Because what we're asking them to accept, us as a third country, is that we guard their external customs border, collect their tariffs, and they collect ours, without any oversight by the European Court of Justice. Completely outside their legal order. As they say, tell that to the Marines, because that is certainly not going to happen. And of course, we've got the European Court of Justice, which will insist on oversight. So let me just talk briefly about a few things that are topical. No deal. Let's not get carried away with this hysteria. If we get no deal, your granny's going to have to eat spam for the rest of her life. The blind and the invalids will be tripping over themselves. Plague of locusts will sweep across the nation. Gary Lineker will be on television every day. So I mustn't be rude to the failed crisp salesman and orange tax avoider. So that's not going to happen. Look, there are two factors of no deal. One is that you cannot mitigate people that unilaterally want to do you damage. So if the French decide that they want to check every docket, every document, every passport, it will eventually rebound on the French.
Yeah.
Okay, but they can do it, and it might be a rocky road for 3 or 6 months.
Yeah.
The other issue is if you have big multinational integrated supply chains like Jaguar Land Rover, like Toyota, like Airbus. But let's be honest, if you can't put contingency plans in 21 months of the implementation period, okay, if there is an implementation period, if you haven't noticed that there was a referendum, there's a chance of a no Brexit, what are you doing in business? Can't you move your port? Can't you move your supply chain? Can't you do things differently? And that's unfortunately what has driven government policy. Some ministers have borne the imprint of the last chief executive officer they sat on, or sat on them.